The Minnesota Legacy Amendment has dedicated funds for arts activity across the state. Dozens of grants are bringing needed money to District 21 through the State Arts Board and Regional Arts Council system. What is your position on protecting this constitutionally dedicated funding? And what is your position on state leveraged funding for the arts and culture? Specifically, that's 45% of the Legacy Amendment.
Red Wing is a very historical town. We have this historic St. James Hotel. We have Block 43 developed next door with Red Wing Shoe Company offices. We have a lot of history in this community, and a lot of it goes down to the arts and that. And we have the train depot down below here that has the art museum down there as well. And we need to make sure that we preserve that and that we maintain that for future generations. And so I fully support making sure that we keep those legacy endowments going, and we don't change any of that, because we need to keep that. You go down to Wabasha, you've got the Eagle Center down there. A lot of history down there from the Indian communities, and so they just opened up a new art exhibit down there. And in fact, they're really going to be growing that here really soon as they can get their expansion going. And that's what we need to do. We need to preserve history. We need to make sure that we're taking care of our legacies and growing them. And we have the Tower View out on Highway 61, and we have a lot of wonderful artists out there, and brings a lot of tourist dollars to the communities, and we need to continue forward with that.
You know, this may sound like a question that's focused on a narrow interest, but I have to tell you, I look at this as being a critical part of the theme that I focused on the last 4 years, and that's rural competitiveness. You know, what sorts of things are we able to do as a state to make our rural economies more competitive? We talk a lot about transportation and infrastructure, or broadband, workforce housing, and job training. About having a vibrant arts community, especially in an area like Red Wing or Goodman County that we can naturally play off of. That's our competitive advantage. And I think, you know, to answer the question, I absolutely support the Legacy Amendment that was voted on overwhelmingly by Minnesota voters. It's in the Constitution to protect that. It's also important for us to recognize that that was not intended to supplant state investment in the arts, but rather to supplement it. And so we should continue to make sure that we're doing what we can to protect our arts and our cultural heritage in Minnesota. You know, we can all talk about what treasures we have here in Red Wing and Goodhue County. I know that we have a traveling Smithsonian exhibit, the Waterways exhibit. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, that is amazing to have that high caliber of an exhibit visiting Red Wing. And the touch that our local talent has put on that with installations and the local story is tremendous. So make your way up to the Goodhue County Historical Center if you get a chance. I'd be remiss not to mention that yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the Goodhue County Economic Development Summit focused on arts. I mean, this is an intentional focus on how we leverage an existing strength, I think, to grow our communities. And when you look at Red Wing, I mean, we're so fortunate to be positioned along the river, amongst the bluffs, in this beautiful community, in this environment. An hour away from the Twin Cities, an hour away from Rochester and the Mayo Clinic, a little more than an hour away from Winona in a higher education institution. We couldn't be better positioned, not to mention an international airport not too far away. And so how do we play off of that strength and leverage our existing capacities in the arts and in other areas, I think, to attract young families and tourism, and to take that next step forward? Because I think if you look at making Red Wing and Goodhue County competitive, it's about bringing folks here. Because I think once they come here, they're going to fall in love. And who knows, they may decide to move here and raise a family too. And that's the sort of thing that has a cascade of benefits for a local community. You know, driving up enrollment numbers and improving their education system. And I'm very optimistic that if we play off of our strengths in Red Wing, we're going to have a very bright future.
I would concur. I'd support the Legacy Amendment. It's quite a tradition in Minnesota, the strong arts that we have, and we certainly, the folks have talked about what we have here in Red Wing as being just outstanding for a community of 16,000 people. I find it interesting as well that when you look at the school systems, and you're all familiar with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, now the trend is to add an E into that acronym: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and they're calling it STEAM. I think that's a testament to what the arts bring to the environment, that creativity, the problem solving. And it's not, you know, most kids don't grow up thinking, well, I'm an artist, but they're using art in so many ways to learn. And so I think that's an important part of that Legacy Amendment as well. And Red Wing has such a rich tradition of connecting kids to the Sheldon and Shondel's has been a big part of that. My kids have had wonderful experiences. And also through the Anderson Center and their legacy of connecting science and scientists with artists. So it's an opportunity that I think Minnesota used well with the legacy amendment and the funds, and I would support it continuing.
Thank you, and I'll just agree with everyone, but when I first learned about this, the amendment passing, it really is one of those things that makes you proud to be a Minnesotan, that our whole state voted on this, and it's something that's going to go on and on. And what I particularly like about it is the fact, the format, that it really encourages communities to come together and be creative about what they're applying for. You don't automatically get the money. It doesn't automatically get renewed. And we've seen that the last couple of years. Some of the projects that have been funded are amazing. I mean, really creative communities coming together and having to put together a good package. And I think that is a great influence. And thank you, Sean, for all the work you've done on that with the State Arts Board. And again, in terms of the competitiveness issue, to me, that's an economic development issue. We can get families here, we can improve our schools, we can get employers here and spousal employment. I mean, all of those issues are just going to double down in terms of once we keep that funding going. So I would definitely want to keep that in place the way it is now.
Right, we will switch now to the hot topic of the day. Assuming no one else, since you all agreed, needed to have a response to the arts. Combining a couple of questions from the audience with a prepared question. Obamacare and MNsure have been a disaster. This audience member writes, relative to the increases in premiums, it is forcing us small group plans and others. Do you feel the business community as employees should be subsidizing these plans through increased premiums? And then, for an example, the skyrocketing costs are very real for businesses here in Red Wing. Many businesses just yesterday in their mail found out how much they are going to be paying for health insurance premiums next year. I know of one family who is self-employed, and their premium next year is going to be $31,000 with a $10,000 deductible. There are very many small businesses that find this difficult. So, with that, what should the state do? We'll start with Lisa.
How did I get to answer this question first? Well, as you all know, this is, as Ann said, this is the hot topic right now. And I do want to just make sure we're clear at the beginning that we're talking about a couple of different issues here. When we talk about the issue that's been in the news recently about MNsure and 5 or 6% of Minnesotans who receive health care or do not receive health care through Medicare or Medicaid or through their employer, that's one issue, and that has to do with the state opting to go on to MNsure as the safe marketplace exchange that had a terrible rollout, was not done well, but it's something that has improved, and I think that what I don't think we should do is immediately get rid of MNsure, all the money that's already been invested, everything that's happened through that, and go on the federal exchange. To me, that's not a good option. I think that's outsourcing our problems. I'd rather keep this in Minnesota. I'd rather pay Minnesotans to deal with this and work on getting the costs down there. That's a MNsure issue. We also have to deal with the cost of actual health insurance on that healthcare exchange. And so that's another thing I think should be dealt with immediately by providing some short-term relief to families who are affected, like Ann was saying, immediately. And I think there are some ideas floating out there about how we can do that, possibly using some of the surplus funds from last year that we haven't dealt with yet, possibly using some of the, there were some tax cuts that were put back in place for the tobacco companies, possibly using some of that to provide immediate relief. But then we've got to look at long term. How are we going to address this issue? And it's not going to be easy. I mean, we've got to look at all options to increase the pool of people who are being covered so that it's not just the sickest of the sick, possibly expanding or allowing people to buy into Minnesota Care. But we've got to be open to that. In terms of small business, if I only get 2 minutes to answer this question, that's a separate issue, but no less important. And we've got to look at why health insurance premiums are so high in this district particularly. I think most people here know that our area in southeast Minnesota has one of the highest, if not the highest, health insurance premiums in the state. we need to look at why that is. If we can get a federal waiver to redraw the lines for the districts, for insurance companies, then we need to do that. But we've got to come at this with a big picture of thought, not just kind of tweaking it in small ways with grants or things like that. So I think it's got to be, basically, I think it needs to be our number one priority at the legislature this year.
I'm going to read you a story that I got in my email. This is the first year our family will be using MNsure because my husband now works for a small company that does not provide benefits, and I am a church secretary with no benefits. We have a son at the U and a daughter who's a senior in high school. By using the calculator, we realized we'd get assistance from the state that was greater than my yearly income if I quit my job to lower our yearly income. I don't want to quit working, but our family would not be able to afford the $1,800 to $3,000 monthly premiums and $12,000 deductibles without assistance. Please work to fix this mess. It is affecting hard-working middle-class families the most. I hear this every day. I door knock for 3 hours every night, and every family tells me a story like this story. MNsure is a portal that was built to replace the DHS system that's still run on like COBOL programming from the 1950s. The state did a horrible job and it doesn't work. They have no electronic data interchange when people enroll for health insurance to tell the insurance companies that somebody has enrolled in health insurance. They are literally sending Excel spreadsheets. It is a disaster. We need to move to the federal exchange and cut our losses. $400 million have been spent and we don't have a workable system. The other 4 things that I would recommend to address the immediate crisis and cost: reinstitute what's called MCHA. MCHA is Minnesota Comprehensive Health Act, which was what we had before Obamacare. That was the high risk pool for the sickest of the sick. Because those folks are now in the individual market, that is what has driven up the costs and kind of upset the apple cart for the individual market. So we need to get back to a high-risk pool for the sickest of the sick. We did it before. We know it works. It can be done again. Next, we need to, I would recommend allowing individual premiums to be tax deductible. We also need to work with the main provider of care in southeastern Minnesota to lower costs. We need to continue to incent businesses and individuals to be responsible for their own health because the cost of health care is expensive. So we need to work on the cost side of delivering it and have personal accountability to also lower the usage. And lastly, I would be very much a proponent to keep working on transparency and costs. You know, it's an industry I've worked in and I understand, but again, why don't you know what your doctor visit is going to cost ahead of time? So we really need to work on that transparency. And the last thing I would recommend is eliminating surprise billing. And if we do some of those things, we can make some impact.
Yeah, this is an incredibly important issue, and I think we all know it. And you know, I have to tell you, in 2013, this Minnesota Senate was faced with a choice. We could either go in with the one-size-fits-all approach, federal exchange, or we could build on Minnesota's history of innovation in healthcare and have our own state-based exchange. And we made the decision to move forward because I think Minnesota can handle this problem better than the federal government can. And folks, think about this. Are we really going to want to call Washington if we have any problems enrolling? No. And so in Minnesota, it's no secret that there were some challenges with the rollout of MNsure. They've made dramatic progress in each of the last couple of years. And I think what we have to focus on is the underlying problem, not the symptom. What is the problem? And that's a very uncompetitive and expensive small group, individual health insurance market. And so there's a whole host of reasons why. You know, the Federal Affordable Care Act does not allow Minnesota to have the MCHOP program that we had in the past. And folks, this was not perfect either. There were very high assessments charged, and the state would periodically have to bail out MCHOP with significant investment of state dollars. And so it was not a perfect approach. But the question for us all now is, how do we move forward? And last year, I held 2 healthcare summits in Goodhue County, one in Red Wing, one in Cannon Falls. We brought together all the right people, the experts, the folks on the ground in St. Paul, and businesses and insurers and consumers in Goodhue County to talk about this issue. And we've been working on it really hard for well over a year. And the bills that we introduced last year that made their way off the Senate floor into conference committee dealt with looking at a reinsurance model to underwrite some of the fluctuations in risk that you see in the individual market, akin to the Alaska model that was editorialized about roughly a month ago. That passed off the Senate floor. We also have an approach to expand public options. Remember when this issue was raging at the federal level, the last thing that fell was the public option. As a last-ditch resort for folks in the individual market who can't find an affordable private health care plan. And I have to tell you, Blue Cross Blue Shield exiting the individual market, this was a loss leader for them. They don't see profits to be made in a very, very expensive and volatile individual market. So the challenge for us is to talk about the underlying problems, the cost drivers, a very difficult individual market, not MNsure, not a website. And so I hope that conversation the next week leading up to the election focuses on the real problems and the real solutions that we've been talking about at the state level. One thing that we're rallying around, and I'll make this my last remark, is to help folks get through the 2017 enrollment period, state-based tax credits. It's not unlike a health savings account just applied after the fact. Help folks lower their costs of premiums on a monthly basis just to get through 2017. This is something that we're very serious about, and I think that we can enact either this fall or right away in 2017.
Yeah, MNsure, the Affordable Care Act, that's thrown our entire healthcare industry into a tailspin. We've taken the doctor-patient relationship pretty much out of the picture. I myself am on my third doctor in the last 5 years because of the doctors just get tired of it and they go to the emergency room. But as far as what we need to do, I agree with Barb on the tax premiums for the individuals being tax deductible. That's a good first step. We need to get money back in people's pockets, not keep taking it out of them. Transparency and costs, we definitely need to get that taken care of. I go out to my insurance company's website, I can't even tell you what my annual physical is going to be. So that needs to be fixed there. But we also need to work doing root cause evaluations. I do those at work all the time to figure out what the underlying cause for why we are where we're at, what went wrong, what went right, and build upon what we can fix. And so with that, we need to work with our federal representatives because this is a federal law. And we need to work with them and get them to understand what our state's going through and get that dialogue going, get the bipartisan work going there, and work with the federal representatives to help change the Affordable Care Act and move forward. The other thing we can do is, in the interim, is getting co-ops like Farm Bureau and Farmers Union, get those to be able to go on the market and get policies for their members. And that's just one thing. And then the other is, I was going knocking a couple weeks ago, and a lady told me she can't keep her individual doctor because it's not part of the plan. She has to go through mail and then pay an additional premium to get that out-of-network doctor that's out-of-network back in the plan. We need to get individual doctors back into the fold on this as well. So a lot to work on, but root cause evaluations are really good options to look at to figure out what we need to fix and how we can go forward with the solutions.
I think a theme that's developed here, and hopefully you recognize this, is we're running for the state legislature. What can we do in St. Paul to make a difference for folks in our state? There's a whole host of issues that are above our control that we try to lobby our federal delegation to change. But the challenge for us in this job is the minute we go in and report for the 2017 legislative session, how can we be the most productive legislator we possibly can be? And I've been focusing on state solutions to state challenges. Absolutely, there's challenges we have with healthcare at the federal level. I'm going to look at that Affordable Care Act. They left prescription drugs off the table. Are you kidding me? Maybe the single biggest cost driver out there. You've heard the stories about EpiPen. I mean, that's just profit-taking, pure and simple. And it's gouging folks who can least afford it. That's not something the state can do a whole lot about. There's some things that we can do to promote use of generics. But there are some issues at the federal level. But I'm not necessarily running to be a federal lobbyist. I'm running to be your state senator. And I want to make state government work as best as it possibly can for the folks in this area. And there are some things that we can do to provide both short-term relief and premiums in 2017 and also get at those underlying cost drivers in healthcare. We've been working on it for 2 years. We've got the ideas. Several of them passed the Senate floor last year. We didn't have to allow this to become a crisis, but we're ready to do something about it. And as I mentioned earlier, I hope that we're able to rally around the underlying cost drivers, the real issues and not throw this, political spin out there that's convenient and might sway votes, but really isn't the problem at the heart of the issue. And so I just want to emphasize that there are things the state can do, and we've got expertise at the local level that's been telling us what we can do. We've introduced those bills, we've taken steps to make them law, and now we've got to get that all in the bill line.
I guess I would ask them why hasn't something been done in 2 years? MNsure is part of the problem. $400 million was spent. It's not just a website, it's the enrollment process. People can't enroll and know that they are on insurance. It takes the county. I met with the director of Goodhue County Health and Human Services. What used to take them 15 minutes to enroll somebody takes them 3 days. The workaround to use this system is like 7 pages long. So they've had to divert employees that would normally be working in child protection, as an example, to people sitting behind a desk to try to get people enrolled in insurance. We can move to the federal exchange, and the federal exchange is not a one-size-fits-all that's going to limit our health insurance options or our plans. The federal exchange is a workable system that can enroll people. Only 14 states chose to build their own system. Minnesota chose to build their own, did not consult any IT experts outside of government or insurance experts outside of government. They built it in a vacuum. One thing about being a state legislator that I'll give you my commitment on is that I will have the courage to call out when we made a wrong decision. And let's not quit spending bad money after good. MNsure has to change, and it is part of the problem.
Well, for sure, I'm glad that we're getting past the initial problems, and MNsure certainly has improved. I talked with Allison O'Toole, who's the executive director of it, to try to understand what have they done, if anything, to get where we are today. And she, of course, and maybe you saw this in the Star Tribune today, assured me that they're on track to handle this new influx and to get through this new open enrollment period. We're going to have to see. We're going to have to hold their feet to the fire. I don't think that throwing the baby out with the bathwater at this point is the right answer. I think it may be at some point. Maybe we have to look at that. I think Barb's right. At some point, you have to say if you made a mistake. I don't think we're there yet. I think we should move forward. I do note that individual premiums are tax deductible for self-employed people, so we have that, but we may have to look at this other issue about the for individual premiums. I think again we need to look possibly is this issue about the increasing the pool of people. Maybe some form of MCHA or a reinsurance model we should look at. But MCHA was very expensive. There was a small group of people. I think it was about 10,000, although maybe I've been bigger than that. It was very expensive, and several times the state had to step in. I mean, it still costs money. It's still going to come from somewhere. And so merely diverting those folks out of the pool isn't necessarily going to put more money back in everyone else's pockets. But we certainly need to look at improving and increasing the pool and look at these big picture cost drivers.
Hold on a second. I have been collecting the stuff that comes to my house. Here it is. You have your own. I know you have your own. You've probably been throwing them out. I've been keeping them, if anyone wants to look. $250,000 in climbing appears to have been spent to date on campaign literature in District 21. And I know when I told some people that at where I work, they were like, just think what we could have done with that money. But that's a lot of money coming in from political action committees and interest groups. I'm not talking about what the individual candidates have spent themselves. This is your opportunity, each of you, to address a single claim against you, either by a PAC or your opponent, and to set the record straight. We will start with Mike. Since I made Lisa take the hard question the first time.
This has been a learning experience, I can tell you that. Yeah, the amount of paper that's coming through and that, it's unbelievable. I guess the funniest one that I've seen out there is the ads that I keep hearing on the radio and down in Rochester on 102.5 Fox and here in Red Wing on AM 1250 and 105.9. It's about education, how I'm going to take teachers and kick them to the curb. I'm going to make bigger classrooms. I'm totally against education. That's kind of odd because I have 2 degrees and I believe in education. Education is the basis for our future, and we need to make sure that we have good quality funded schools, that we have the resources our teachers need to teach our kids and have the environment that's a safe environment for our kids to learn in. I was always told by my mom and dad, you can never go wrong with a good education. And I took that to heart. That's why when I was 38 years old, I did go back to school and got an electrical engineering degree. People told me I was too old. I couldn't do it. And I love it when people tell me that because I like to prove them wrong, and I did. And, you know, education we have to invest in. There's no getting around it. What I will do when I get to the Senate is I'm going to work on that funding formula that's out there for our students per pupil. Right now, Red Wing and our towns in our district are about 30 to 50% underfunded based on per pupil than what the metro schools get. And we have the same issues with unfunded mandates from the state and federal that all these big metro schools have. And we need to make sure that we've got our equitable share of that so that we can have the quality education, have the smaller classrooms, and get our kids the quality education that they deserve.
And I'm glad you asked this question. And the challenge is, all right, where do we begin? You know, when we're door knocking, a lot of times we'll ask voters, hey, what's on your mind? And, you know, it's okay, where do you begin? There's so many things out there. This has been a really disappointing campaign, both by the outside resources that have been spent misrepresenting my record. I've been working my tail off, folks, for 4 years, trying to get it right. And the way this health care issue and insurance and the Affordable Care Act has been misrepresented is really regrettable. But that's outside money. And that's money that we as candidates have no control over. But I have to tell you, I wasn't going to bring this up today, but Andy asked the question. I was door knocking like I do pretty much every day over this weekend, and a woman handed me a piece of literature. And on the bottom of it says, Schmidt says he works for us, but supports Zip Rail in Rochester. And I said, oh geez, you know, another baseless claim that's out there. But this one said, prepared and paid for by Goggin for Senate. It might be no better. I've been engaged in this issue for 2 years. We've gone to the same meetings. I've said the same thing over and over again. I introduced legislation to provide protections and accountability and transparent, structured public engagement. That didn't matter to you. And so you're going around in the last week of a campaign doing this at people's doors. This isn't outside special interest money. This is my opponent intentionally misrepresenting my position on an issue. And that's really disappointing, because I think we've all set a better example than that. And so I don't want to sound like I'm bellyaching here, folks, but this is the choice you have. And we've run a clean campaign twice now, focused on the issues, knocking on all these doors, talking about balancing our budget, investing in education, making Minnesota work again. And I've delivered on those promises, and I'm going to continue to be a positive voice for our area, do everything I possibly can to represent the interests of Red Wing and Goodhue County, and to do it in a way that's respectful. Win, lose, or draw, I will look back at this campaign and feel proud of the campaign we ran, just like we did in 2012. I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay, I'm going to tell a funny story for a little levity now. Can I share that story? Okay. Yeah, the haircut story? Okay. Lisa and I are both moms, and we, our paths cross on things that we're both passionate about, education being one. Well, we were at Lake City for a forum, and it was running late, so our part, wasn't up yet. And Lisa and I are talking, and she was missing her daughter's senior swim banquet, and I was missing helping my daughter pack for a really important event, and we were both struggling with a cold, and we both were saying, we need haircuts. We can't get a haircut. Well, it so happens we get our haircut by the same woman, and we had both texted her that afternoon saying, please get me in for a haircut. So I said, did you get the haircut? She said, did you get the haircut? No, the lady was out of town. Neither of us got the haircut. So it's just an example. I think I'm proud of the campaign I've run. I wanted it to be in my own words, and I've done that. And I think both Lisa and I have taken the position to not attack each other personally and to not attack our families. Our kids go to school together. And so I think we've done that, and that's good. My daughter loves to go to the mailbox and say, "Mom, what did they say about you today?" So she'll text me when she gets home from school, and she used to get all riled up about it, and now she just laughs about it. So I guess the one thing that I would call out is education, and I think it wasn't from Lisa, it's from the outside PACs. It gets in an open seat. Lisa and I are both running for an open seat. It's a highly contested race, and there's money that's pouring in because we want to win it and they want to win it. That's just the way this works. It's a common misnomer that Republicans don't support education. You all know, I think you know me in this room, you know what my commitment to education in this town and what I've done. So to see those pieces, I think, was the hardest. But I'll just give you some figures so you know. In 2016, there was historic money put into education, $525 million. School readiness more than doubled, from 24 million to 67 million. Head Start doubled. A lot of money was put in education that Republicans voted on. So we need to get rid of that misnomer that we are anti-kids and anti-schools. So thank you, and we both did get a haircut this week. Yes?
Yeah, we both have to thank our hairdresser. So, well, I agree with Barb. We've been very pleased with the way we've run this. We talked at the beginning, wanted to just keep it about the issues, and I think we've been able to do that. But the one piece that's come through, well, I first want to say that what I object to most about all these pieces is they're caricatures. They're just such broad brush ideas. You know, if you're a Democrat, you're tax and spend. If you're a Republican, they've got this anti-education thing. I mean, they're just so silly, I think, and I think they're insulting to the average voter. The one that just made me so upset was the very first thing that came out, and it's been repeated about 9 times, was that I somehow voted for, in 2010, for a tax increase on a electric utility fee that was going to raise $200,000 worth of taxpayer dollars. And the first piece said that I supported it, and subsequent pieces said that I actually voted for it. Well, I was shocked because I thought, we don't have utility franchise fees in Red Wing. How is this even? I don't remember doing this. I went back, I pulled the minutes. Guess what? I voted against it twice. And that's because in order to have a utility franchise fee, it has to be by form of an ordinance. An ordinance has to be voted on twice. The first time it came out, very clearly says in the minutes, I spoke out against it. I was the only one who spoke out against it because I think utility franchise fees are a non-transparent way of passing on costs to the consumer, because Xcel Energy would have taken that fee, they would have turned around and passed it on to the consumer. I don't think that's a transparent way to do business. I voted against it. The next time it came up 2 weeks later, we all voted against it, and it died. And so I just want to set the record straight. That's been repeated numerous times. I never voted for that. And generally speaking, if you go back and look, you're going to see that my record on the city council was always talking about being transparent, trying to account for our costs. In Red Wing, we do a lot of, we pay for a lot of things through our property taxes. Excuse me, we don't have a lot of outside income through these utility fees or other kinds of fees. And I support that because I think it's the most transparent way to do business and to run a government. And I'm always going to be very careful and as transparent as possible with your funds.
Time for 1 minute closing comments from our candidates.
Well, thank you all for being here and listening. You're probably getting tired of these same issues talked about again and again, but I think it does help us all develop our positions as well. What I've learned again and again is that people tell me, we want you to go up and get some things accomplished. We want you to work together. We want legislators that aren't just pointing fingers and talking about party all the time. We want you to get things done for our district and our community and our needs. And I believe that I'm the person to do that from our district. I have the background, the experience with 8 years on the city council, working for the Wabasha County Board, running my own business. All of these things, I believe that I can be the most effective advocate for our district and come back and represent you up at St. Paul, but also come back and make sure that everyone here knows what's going on. I strongly believe in constituent services and making sure you feel that you're represented and you have a voice in St. Paul. So thank you again for having us, and I ask for your vote on November 8th.
Yeah, as Lisa said, I'm sure you're counting the days until this election is over as much as we are counting the last days. So thanks for coming here today and us having the chance to discuss these important issues. Whether it's been in healthcare, in education, in nonprofits, or in my volunteer role, when I see a challenge that can bring our community together and make our community better, I've stepped up to those challenges. And I have made a difference. I'm a proven, results-driven leader who digs deep to make sure that I understand all the facts and brings people together, regardless of party or opinion. We need to get things done. And that's how I've treated my business career and in other things I've done in my life. So I think it needs to be less about party and more about being productive. I look forward to the election here coming up, and I ask for your vote and your endorsement. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to talk about these issues. It's so important for us to be able to get together and cut through all that stuff that you hear out there and have a real conversation about the issues. And we've got some great stories along the campaign trail. Maybe we can share the food fight that broke out in Cannon Falls about a month ago. But I've really been impressed with the plethora of legislative candidates here, and really look forward to getting together and working hard on issues in St. Paul in 2017. Folks, I'm very proud of my record here in Redmond in the last 4 years. The promises that we made, we delivered on. We've turned the corner in Minnesota, and I am so incredibly optimistic about the future of this part of the state and about our state in general. And I think it's important for us not to take our eye off the ball. And I think moving forward, the themes that have been with us the last couple of years will continue. Rural competitiveness. How do we level the playing field in greater Minnesota to make sure more parts of the state are participating in the economic recovery and well-positioned to succeed in the 21st century? We talk so much about, I think, the natural endowments we have in Red Wing. There's more things that we can do. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done on broadband, on workforce training, on workforce housing, on education. Next year, we're going to have an opportunity to move forward on transportation and healthcare affordability. These are real issues that we're focusing very intently on. And I look forward to continuing to serve as your state senator. And I, too, ask for your vote on the 8th.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for coming today. This has been a really good discussion. We've had a lot of good information talked about today. There's a reason why the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, Minnesota Farm Bureau, National Federation of Independent Businesses have all endorsed me. Because they know I have the business acumen to do what's right, to do the right things up at the Senate, and I have the background to come up with common sense solutions on these issues. So anyways, as I was saying, we need to keep after it. We have a lot of difficult issues ahead of us, but we do need to work on them. We need to come up with good common sense solutions. I will be that one up there in the Senate that does that. The other thing I'm going to do when I get up there is I'm going to join the Purple Caucus. What the Purple Caucus is, it's an organization right now of about 20 senators between the Republicans and the Democrats that put partisanship aside to really work on the issues that are affecting the people in Minnesota. We need that type of representation up there. We need someone who is willing to work across those lines, forget the parties, get up there, come up with the solutions with our fellow senators, and not be partisan about it. We're dealing with people's lives here and their livelihoods, and so we need to make good common sense decisions up there. Being part of that Purple Caucus will